Okay, hello everyone. Joe, I think that we can start with the webinar.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our live webinar related to the EU Cities for Fair and Ethical Trade Award, the 2020 edition. My name is Joe Wozniak. I'm the head of the Trade for Sustainable Development program at the International Trade Center in Geneva, Switzerland. And I am joined by my colleagues. First, my colleague from DG Trade in Brussels, Indre Weiskauskate, she's on the line as well. And then my two colleagues with me at ITC in Geneva, Petra Walterova and Madison Wilcox. And so the three of us, myself, Petra, and Madison, will be managing and moderating the webinar with you this afternoon. Just to say, in terms of the first, just the kind of the order of business, we'd ask that all of you please mute your microphones so we can make sure that there's no feedback on the line, because we are recording this webinar. And the webinar will be available after tomorrow for everyone to then download from our website. So in order to make sure that we have the clearest possible recording, please do mute your microphone. What we will do in the next several minutes, my colleague Petra will go through some slides, not many slides, just about 4 or 5 slides that will give a background to the award. And then the balance, or I should say the majority of this webinar will really be related to questions and answers, so Q&A, which means that we want to hear from you any questions you have related to the application process. Any question that you may have about the overall application, what type of information we're looking for, anything, you can ask that question then after we finish with the brief presentation. Because as you know, the deadline for the application has been extended until the 12th of July, which is a Sunday. And as such, we want to make sure that everyone has the information at their hands that they need in order to have the time to make the application. So with that, I will turn over the word to my colleague Petra, who can start in right now with the overall presentation. Just to say, from our perspective at ITC, we are a joint UN-WTO organization working in conjunction and partnership with DG Trade for the implementation of this award. Also, we are joined by our colleagues on the line from FRANOS. FRANOS is the award secretariat that we are working with. We already worked with them for the previous edition of the award that was awarded to the city of Ghent in 2018, and we're now happy that we're working with FRANOS again this time. So with that kind of preamble and first comments, I'll give the word to my colleague Petra. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. So my name is Petra Walterova. I'm a program officer here in the International Trade Center in Geneva, Switzerland. As Joe mentioned, I will only give a very generic overview of this award, because you might know that we spent the first webinar in depth covering the nuts and bolts of the award and a little bit of the history and generally the rationale, etc., as well as the basic criteria of eligibility, who should apply. So this is more of a basic primer. And just for those of you who were not able to tune into that webinar, or even the second webinar about the application form. So in terms of the 2021 edition, it's a 2021 edition that's going to be awarded in 2020, but the winner is going to take the title into 2021. That's why the year. All EU cities with more than 20,000 inhabitants can apply, but it's really for EU member states. So really cities located in EU member states, not the entirety of Europe. And it's worthwhile saying that any city stakeholder can launch the application for this award. So it does not necessarily have to be a city administrator or city council officer, but the application should be, of course, submitted for the city with a knowledge of that city, and that's usually attested by an attached mayoral declaration and a contact for an officer in that city council or the city administration. What this EU City Award is looking at is really a coherent approach to sustainable, fair and ethical trade. So it's quite a specific theme. There are, of course, many other EU awards as well that are looking at cities' achievements in many different areas. But here we really try to look at the interconnectedness of the city with the external world, and specifically looking at the sustainability and sustainable development agenda. The entire application and those six questions that are contained in the application, they try to get an overview of what the city does and the achievements, what the achievements of the city are in terms of its vision and strategy and objectives in the area of sustainable, fair and ethical trade, any relevant policies, as well as impactful activities and initiatives. So we kind of look at it through these three different levels. And as I said before, we are looking a little bit at a coherent narrative behind achievements and activities that the city would put forward. What we are not saying is that it's not necessarily only about what the city itself promotes as their official policies, but it also might be about the initiatives and activities of the ecosystem that the city usually one way or another interacts with. So it's a really, it's a nice package. It's an overall story. Why should cities apply in the first place for this award? Well, first of all, it's really a recognition of their achievements and activities and impact at the EU level. So we have seen that oftentimes cities get recognition, of course, for their efforts at the national levels, but this initiative is aiming to elevate that really to the European level and provide, just by doing that, provides an increased visibility for the city's achievement and efforts. Hopefully through what's listed here as the last, through a network of cities for fair and ethical trade, which we established in the first edition in 2019, 2018-2019, I should say. The cities should also get access to, let's say, some sort of a peer-to-peer learning with other cities on the topics of sustainable and fair and ethical trade, which is an area where not necessarily a lot of, let's say, intra-EU coordination or exchange is happening. So this network is really filling that void. And by that, you should get some inspiration for your local activities as well, again, by mutual learning from the other cities. The winner also gets support from us at the International Trade Center, financed by the European Commission, to develop and implement a development cooperation project, if possible outside the EU. So again, the idea of interconnectedness here plays a role. Usually such a project would be a development project that the city would like to actually implement. They might have already some initial ideas, but they do not necessarily have the expertise, time, or any other resources to actually kick it off. So this essentially winning the award would give those means to the winner. And finally, we also promote the pioneers of what we call sustainable trade champions through a report, which we just published earlier this year. This is a compilation of the, let's say, most inspirational initiatives by the cities that have applied, regardless of whether they were awarded a mention, a special mention, or they actually won the award. It's really all the cities with worthwhile initiatives, and initiatives that are really worth sharing and kind of disseminating. So they are all featured in the Sustainable Trade Champions report, which we will be updating with every edition of the award. Turning to the application process for this edition, these are just a few, let's say, bullet points, again, as a way of a reminder that the application process is taking place via an online application portal, which is now open, of course, and will be open until, I think, 6 o'clock on the 12th of July. The application form guidelines, which I would always highly encourage anyone intending to apply for this award to download. On the website, they are very let's say useful in terms of filling out the application, because the application form online is a simple questionnaire, while the application form guidelines give you an idea of what is it behind the questions asked. The same applies to the rules of contest. Also highly advisable to consult them before submitting the application. They are available at the same place as the application form guidelines on this EU award website. In terms of the languages in which the application should be submitted, the rules of contest speak about English being, let's say, an encouraged language of submission, but it's really good to emphasize that submission in any of the EU formal working languages is possible, and your application will then be translated before it goes for evaluation, but the evaluation process takes place in English. Why we encourage submission in English as well is because if your city gets shortlisted, meaning an automatic invitation to join the network of the cities for fair and ethical trade, then the entire work agenda is essentially carried out in English as well. On the other hand, even if the application is not written in English, again, that's very much possible, and it's just good to think who would then represent the city, for instance, in the network. So at least having someone with some English competencies who is knowledgeable about the work would be very good. There is, for each of the questions, for those of you who have already gone through the application form, we also provide the option to upload some evidence to support the claims made in the application narratives. So I think it's good to say that the application narratives and what's really put forth in the text of the application is what matters the most, because that's is the first thing that the evaluators will see. But this can be again supported to make it more substantive or substantiated, really with maximum of 3 pieces of evidence. And these can be a document with a policy, for instance. It can be a website, a URL to an important website about a certain initiative, for instance, etc. We encourage conciseness when it comes to the application and its overall length. So there is a word limit for each of the questions and an overall application length limit that's of course, it's an implication of that, which is about 4,000 words. So it's really quite a short application, and it really shouldn't take so much of the time, hopefully. Once more to repeat that the Mayr declaration is mandatory. So the application is actually not, you cannot submit the application unless you also upload the signed and stamped Mayr declaration. So please take a look at that piece of document as well. And ideally, the declaration takes essentially the form of the template that we provide also on the website, which then should be filled out and signed and stamped, as I said. So the application portal, as we said, is open, is available on the website. We regularly also share newsletters with information and updates. So if you're not subscribed to that, I would highly encourage you to do that. And see really, whether there are any questions that you already have, then of course, we can address them also through the award secretariat that are also on the call today. We summarized a little bit of the key points that I made in the past couple of slides. I will probably keep them here also for the Q&A, but it's again just the most important pieces of information, emphasizing that the application can be submitted in any of the 24 official working languages of the EU. You should answer all the questions as precisely as possible. The application form in any case marks them as mandatory. Each question has a specific word limit. And if you go above that, then that part of the text will not be accepted. And now when we're at already the, what is it, 18th of June, it's very important to start the application, of course, as soon as possible. But we know that many cities opt for the option of studying the application form, the guidelines, and then, of course, uploading the questions a little bit towards the end of the deadline. But I would still encourage you to log in and make yourself, let's say, familiar with the application form in case that there are any questions that you might still raise, even if they are procedural ones or administrative ones, like about uploading any pieces of evidence, for instance, etc. So please don't leave it for the last moment. With this very short overview, I would open the floor now to any participants in this webinar for any specific questions that you might have that might not have been answered before, either through our FAQ that's also available on the website or through the previous webinars. So now is the time. Thank you. I'm going to take a look at the chat box. Yeah, it's a good question that I'm already receiving. Whether do we post your questions here or whether you should talk? You can do both, actually. We would encourage you to talk as well.
Okay, maybe I can take the first question. I'm Jesper Jones from Göteborg, Gothenburg, Sweden. And first, I would just like to say I've been part of this process since the beginning, and I just want to say thank you for the great support and the big that I have gotten. I'm sorry for my English because it's my second language, as all of you. But my question is with the documents, with the files that I upload. For instance, there is one question about the big overall vision of the city. My city has more like tens or 50 or 100 documents of how to do sustainable action in different parts of the city, so to speak. And I only have 3 documents to upload. So I'm just wondering, what should I focus on? Is it environmental, or is it fair trade, or is it what?
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's a great question, Jesper. And first of all, your English is perfect. It's better than mine. So on this side, you know, our motivation to limit the number of pieces of evidence to only 3 was, you know, in the first edition, we actually had more pieces of evidence possible to upload, but then the evaluators were literally bathing in documents. And exactly because cities tend to have, as you say, you know, especially if you focus on sustainability a lot, they tend to have, of course, a lot of this codified in various documents. So there, I would really encourage you to, without, of course, having the background of exactly what your city focuses on, you know, try to do a little bit of an inner evaluation, what could be the most relevant one. I would say that anything focusing on fair trade, of course, would be probably the most relevant. And when it comes to the mission, I'm just going to quickly check what is it that we also wrote in the application guidelines, because we were reviewing some documents as well for that. Yeah, we didn't really put actually too much on the possible evidence, because the mission and vision specifically is something that's usually, I'm not really sure, for instance, we were not super sure whether that's codified as such. I would say that maybe what you have in mind is more on the policy side, where of course much is on paper. So, you know, if you want to substantiate your answer to question number 1, really that's focusing on the strategy, I would just try to do a little bit of a very quick internal evaluation on what could be the most relevant, and really try to pick that, because just to bear in mind that this is what the evaluators will look at in greater detail. If you would like to outline a little bit more and just mention the breadth of what's available in the city and how much you actually have already quote unquote on paper, I would also try to make a note of that, a notion of that in the text, in the actual narrative, to really, you know, make it clear that the commitments and intentions and strategies are really on many different fronts. But in terms of the actual evidence, I would really try to submit those that you would want the evaluators to really take a look at, that you feel are the most related to sustainable, fair, and ethical trade.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. Christina Ropa is asking, because her microphone doesn't work, whether a digital signature is okay for the mayor's declaration. Yes, I believe under the current circumstances, we don't really have a specific policy for that, but normally digital signatures are a valid means of signing documents, and as long as you're using it as well in your, even the city's internal approval processes, then that should work for the purposes of this round. I hope I answered that question. Okay, we will leave it open. I'm sorry for any background noise. We have some construction works taking place, or road works outside of the building, so sorry for that. And we will just wait for any other questions, either through the chat box or raised as just put it.
I have another one,
Yeah, please,
if I may. Can you leave Earl a link in the what do you call it, the box where you put the answers?
A link
For example, like if you've done.
Yes, I see what you mean. Yeah. Actually, I'm going to turn to the Secretariat because I think we discussed this at some point, but very honestly, I myself do not remember whether we allowed it. I think we said that the links will be part of the evidence. Can I turn to Franos, please, for answer?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So for the web link, if you want to put it as an evidence, you create a Word document and you put one link inside the Word document, and then you upload the Word document.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, but again, I understand kind of where you, of course, aiming with this. I would just say, you know, for instance, in the first edition, we didn't allow any links directly in the text boxes as well for the actual narrative. And the reason being that the evaluators really looked at the entire application as a story almost, and they didn't click, you know, through hyperlinks here or there, because that would be kind of disturbing them from really looking at the overall story. So that's why we decided to keep even the URL links as only part of the evidence, even if it looks a little bit limiting. But you know, we're kind of kindly asking the cities to think it through a little bit and submit, you know, as close an evidence as possible. Also, for you to know, quite an important thing, when the evaluators are going to be evaluating the applications, they will have quite a bit of time, over a month, and they will be able to ask clarifications, and including, you know, they can actually ask for pieces of evidence when something really catches their eye in the application. So in that sense, during this evaluation period, which will be in the later part of the summer, it is possible that you will still receive some clarification questions through the Secretariat from the evaluators that will be looking at your application. So there's also this, let's say, second tier mechanism of how to really promote what you would like to submit in the application.
Sorry, Sis from Antwerp, Belgium.
Hello.
Yes, Sis from Antwerp, Belgium. I have a question. Is there? Do I understand it well that there is only one city that will win the award, or are there more cities that can win the award?
Great question. Thank you very much, Sis. So there is one winner. There is one overall winner. Like we had in 2018, it was the city of Ghent from Belgium, as you might know, of course. But we also have several categories of special mentions. And these cities are usually from the, of course, from the shortlist, and they receive a special mention for, you know, and specific achievements in specific areas. So currently, what we had was 4 categories from 2018, which we would like to actually keep, unless the jury decides to award a special mention in any other category, which the jury, of course, they have the right to do it. It's a little bit of a let's say, modular approach to see more or less what comes through from the applications, because we don't want to just have predefined categories in something so you know, flexible as trade is, of course. So in this sense, in 2018, we had special mentions for education and community participation, for innovation in procurement. We had a special mention for global partnerships, and it was actually innovation, and then any inspiring procurement practice. So we had 4 other categories where we also had, let's say, kind of these special mention winners, but they were not the overall winner. But overall, there were 5 cities who were mentioned, who were awarded.
And is there a limit to the number of cities on the shortlist?
Yes, it's a little bit modular. We wrote it in the rules of contest. Normally, we would work with up to, I think, 10 on the shortlist, and anything between 5 and 10. We're usually saying it really depends on the quality of the applications, and this is not a decision of the jury. This is the decision of the evaluation committee. So there is a 2-step process in the evaluation process. First, all applications are reviewed by evaluators in an evaluation committee. They decide on a shortlist, which again can be anything between 5 and 10 applications. And then that shortlist is going to the jury, who then decides on the winner. The evaluation committee also actually may nominate, let's say, ideas for who should receive a special mention. Which then is, you know, confirmed or selected by the jury, or the jury can also actually come up based on their deliberation with another category.
Okay, thank you.
But in any case, the shortlisted cities by the evaluation committee, they are all being invited to the network already. At least that's how the network is set up now after the first edition, when we are really trying and testing everything as well, how it works, how it could work. After the second edition, we, you know, with the expanded network, we will deliberate again further whether to open the network even a little bit more, you know, to any other cities, how to really best exchange the experiences in between cities, etc. So already being shortlisted actually brings quite a bit of value to the cities, because it's really where they are exposed, you know, to what the other cities are doing. And so far, we've got really, really positive experience, I must say.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Hello, can I ask another question?
Yes, of course, please do.
This is Sophie, also from Belgium. I am the coordinator for the Fair Trade Towns in Flanders in Belgium. So we contacted all the towns in Belgium with more than 20,000 inhabitants. But some of them are hesitating to apply, because when they look at the website, they see cities as Lyon, Madrid, Malmö, Dortmund. And if they have, for example, 25,000 inhabitants, they don't feel like they fit in between all those big cities. So I was just wondering if they can also apply, if they stand a chance between the bigger cities.
That's a fantastic question. Thank you, Sophie. The answer is absolutely resounding yes. We would be super happy to actually see applications from smaller cities. The fact that they are seeing only applications from bigger cities is simply given by the fact that we've only had 1 edition so far. And as it happened, really, it was the bigger cities, and by bigger cities, I mean those more or less above 200,000 people, inhabitants, who applied in the first edition. But you know, if we can encourage in any way smaller cities to apply, that would be absolutely fantastic. We would like to have this diversity for sure. You know, we have been trying to kind of make that point, of course, across our communication so far. We realize that it's a little bit of a challenge, but you know, even if you review, for instance, our second webinar, you're speaking a lot about the context criteria in the application and the place of this criteria in the overall process of the application. And it's exactly to give the evaluators a little bit of the context where the city is coming from, so that we can place you know, a city like Madrid with a smaller city at more or less equal footing. The application, you know, the overall award is not about how much is done, how many activities, how big the budget is. It's really more about the innovation behind it, the inventiveness and all of that. And usually smaller cities are very, very good at that. So we would be really super happy to see, you know, any submissions from these cities that we can also learn from, and the other cities can learn from. We really believe that big cities, small cities can really get inspired by each other a lot. And, you know, small cities are usually much more nimble as well. So in that sense, they absolutely stand a chance, and I would highly encourage applications from those cities, of course.
Okay, thank you. I will contact them and try to convince them to apply.
Thank you very much, Sophie. That's very good. If you would like to get in touch with us, please do through Secretariat. Normally, you know, there's an email address or a phone as well. So please get in touch. You know, if you need any support, we're definitely happy to support you, of course, in that as well. But thank you very much for the initiative. Okay. We will leave still some more time for any other questions. Even from the same people, don't be shy.
Can I ask a third question then, if nobody else?
Of course.
Yes,
Yes.
we're here again. Yes, because I was thinking there's have been a lot of because of COVID-19, there has been a lot of difference, like plans that you had that's not been happening yet, that you can't, like, we thought we would have gotten much longer in our new organizational system with the Factory City in Gothenburg and stuff, but we didn't because of COVID. Is it still like what do you call it, to write that in the future we want to, like, blah 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 blah, do this and that?
Yes. Yes. And if you see, you know, in our guidelines, oftentimes we also encourage that. So it definitely could be a combination, and especially I think in this edition, this is going to be very well understood, of course. Ideally, you know, the plans that you mentioned would be somehow substantiated. That would be those that would be, let's say, already approved, or of course, when you're speaking about your mission and vision, that's less of a case. But you know, for any policies, I think that absolutely makes sense to mention this. And I think it still can be something that's very substantive in the application, and then again inspiring.
And if we did something quite innovative because of COVID-19, is that also something you want to put in?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
You know, I wouldn't be. I mean, there is nothing that we can say about it right now for sure. But I wouldn't be surprised if the jury and the evaluation committee, which are in any case, I mean, they're independent, you know, from those that you're speaking to right now. But I wouldn't be surprised if they will like to actually see, you know, such notions. They're absolutely not mandatory, of course. They're not part of what we are, you know, stating in the guidelines. But I think that if any such innovation, exactly because I mentioned that innovation is really something that is really valued, and there was really even a special mention for that awarded to Lyon specifically in the last edition. It really makes a lot of sense. Innovation is really I would say it's quite an important part of this, because that's really then, what we would like to spread with this award as well across the EU and with the other cities. So that again, that kind of the learning value is kind of very much tangible, let's say, in that. So yes, absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
I also received another question on the supporting documents, whether they can be submitted in the national language. Yes, absolutely. The supporting documents usually are in the national languages. We do not ask the cities to translate them. As I said, even the actual application itself can be submitted in the national language. There is really no need for translating anything. When we are translating applications, you're focusing only on the text. So please just bear it in mind when you're submitting it in your national language. So let's say if the application is submitted in a Slovak language, then we would really submit the narrative in Slovak, and we would translate that into English. And the pieces of evidence, even if they are in Slovak language, we would actually keep them in Slovak. But we would try to, we have a pool of evaluators that have different language skills. If it's too difficult for them to assess that, then we would engage again translators to help them, of course, with assessing the content of the pieces of evidence. It's also why we're kind of keeping them, limited only to 3 pieces. But generally, we are trying to have multilingual evaluators who can at least have the reading proficiency in the EU languages. The various EU languages, I should say. Okay, I don't know if there are any other questions. We still definitely have time to take them now. If not now, again, the Secretariat is very much at your disposal as well, at any point in time, to answer questions, to guide you through something that's not, let's say, super clear. And again, so you can really get back to them whenever you need. There is still time. There is still 4 weeks before we close the application process. So hopefully that's still quite a lot of time to work on the applications and to have them in let's say high quality as well. I'm just going to ask the Secretariat whether they received any questions on their side, and maybe if not, then we can end this webinar as it is. I will still leave also a few minutes, if anyone else decides to write a question through the chat box or raise it.
No, we did not receive any questions directly.
Good, thank you. So Sophie has to leave. I think that, yeah, we will also end this webinar for now. So thank you very much to everyone who raised the questions, who have been working on the applications, of course, and hopefully by now much of this process is clear. Again, if not, I'm reminding probably for the 3rd or 4th time already, but please contact the Secretariat. They are there to answer your questions, not only in English, but also in other languages. So again, don't be shy, and we are here ready to respond to any questions that you might still have. So thank you very much, everyone, for your attention, and have a good summer, as Jesper saying as well. Thank you.